Welcome to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Eric. I'm with my co-host Robert. How you doing today, Robert?
Doing good. Excited for some football and looking forward to the start of football season finally. A couple good games today, and then we hit the big games on Saturday. But
excited is not in your voice. Like, come on, we finally have football has been played. It hasn't been the highest quality, but we've got some really good football coming very soon, as early as tonight. So excited for week one, the real starting week, in my opinion, of college football. And we're a week away from NFL. So, yeah, this is awesome. September is here. Happy September 1st, everybody. Man, I'm so pumped about this.
Yeah, the first week was not, the best example of quarterback play in most cases. But let's jump into some college week 0 here. Let's talk about some of the kind of the big names there. I think the biggest thing to talk about is Drake May in North Carolina. There's obvious competition concerns. They just played Florida A&M. They're not like this team that's gonna, they're an FCS school, right? You're supposed to beat these teams like they did. Is there anything that you can take away from Drake May from this performance, though? You're muted. Can't hear you.
Thank you. Yeah, so the biggest thing with Drake May is he looked the part. He did what he needed to do, right? He had 5 touchdowns. He averaged a solid 8.0, yards per completion or attempt, And really what excited me is that 42-yard run, right? This man is big. He's got good size. And, he can throw it. He can run it. You're right. Florida A&M is very low competition. And honestly, if you're a UNC fan, I would be worried considering how they gave up 24 points. And it took them a while to, put this game away. But, you planting your flag on Drake May should be pretty happy, I think, right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was right, though, when I said, like, this team's not going to be good. Like, this team is probably like a 7-8 win team. But this is enough for Drake May to show and to grow with the team, right? This is a young team. It's a team that's going to continue to get better as the season goes on. And for me, I think you should be scared to play North Carolina in like week 10, week 11 of the college football season. If you get them in the beginning of the season, though, like you're like, man, I'm glad we got them now. I'd rather not take a chance and play them when they're kind of starting to hit their groove and they're starting to kind of figure everything out. Marion Hampton looked really good. Again, competition concerns, but the offense as a whole looked pretty good. So,
yeah, I gotta say I was a little sad to see Marion Hampton seeming to be the obvious number one in that backfield. True freshman, just like my guy George Pettaway. Big fan of Pettaway. Pettaway did do well in the limited opportunities. He had 4 rushes, but he had a nice 29-yarder. He had a touchdown. Those two are definitely interesting, right? Young Devy assets, young C2C assets that, should grow. Obviously, Josh Down did Josh Down's things. He's one of the better college receivers. I think the question is what's going to happen, when it comes to the NFL with Downs. In terms of, getting UNC at the right time, look out this weekend. I'm calling it Appalachian State at Boone will take down UNC and claim dominance over the state of North Carolina.
Yeah, that's a bold take. I do want to address one. We have a question real quick about Brian Robinson or Kadarius Toney. So I think you should probably keep Brian Robinson, but depending on the price for Kadarius Toney, I think he's actually a solid sleeper this year. He could potentially be a lead target in a room that doesn't have very much talent in the Giants for the Giants. I don't know, what do
Yeah,
you
I'm
think?
not sure if this question is saying, hey, like straight up, who would you, prefer? Maybe someone offered him Tony for Robinson. Um, if that's the case, I'll go Tony. Not only am I not big fan of Brian Robinson, as a fantasy asset, um, but obviously, horrible situation. Nothing against the person at all was my opinion there. Horrible situation. He was a victim of a multiple gunshot wound. It's terrible. It's really good to hear the initial reports. That sounds like in terms of what happened, right, he's going to have the best possible outcome health wise. But if the question is, straight up for me, yeah, give me the first round wide receiver over a running back who I didn't really love.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Brian Robinson is, I've been hearing reports that he comes back in week 5, and in the case that let's just say that those training camp reports of him taking over the starting job are true, then I want that first string running back, even if it's more likely to be a committee. You can get some value there. So if being able to keep both, and you could probably throw Brian Robinson on your IR. In most leagues, I would imagine have IR slots. So just throwing Brian Robinson on IR would be a good idea. But
yeah, my thought is, right, we saw those reports about week 5. I think those reports are more the first time he's eligible to return, right? Because he got put on that non-football injury list. That is the same thing as in terms of how many games you're out as the IR, which is a minimum of 4 games. Yeah. If he comes back by week 5, like good on Brian Robinson. Like, wow, what a recovery after such a horrible accident. I don't know if accident's the right word, but such a horrible incident. I'm not a doctor, but I got to think you get shot through the bloody kneecap and you're running back. I don't think you're back in a month or, whatever it is, 6 weeks, but
yeah,
we'll see.
I heard optimism, but it's one of those things. I mean, none of us really know what's going to happen there, but
yeah.
But yeah, let's jump back into Illinois. So I actually have a lot to talk about here. So Chase Brown looked fantastic. My thing with Chase Brown was Wyoming's not a very good team, right? But I will say that what I saw from Chase Brown, excuse me, is that he could be a 4th, 5th round running back. That was kind of what I saw from that. And I think he has the potential to rise at the Senior Bowl, kind of like Rachaad White did, if he goes. And I want to see more, and I want to see more in the passing game and, stuff like that. The issue that I have with Illinois in general is their quarterback play. I think that, people are going to say, okay, well, he had a decent game stat wise, but he has a low yards per attempt. And honestly, he just throws it around the line of scrimmage. He doesn't really do much, down the field or anything like that. And to me, like, that's the next step for Illinois is they have to be able to get somebody that's able to throw the ball like that. And again, though, it is Wyoming, and they didn't need to throw the ball downfield at all to beat Wyoming. And so the question is, is that something that they have in their repertoire, but they just didn't, show it? Or like, what do you think about that kind of?
Yeah, I have a similar takeaway. Chase Brown was really the only thing that excited me from that game at all. For those that you don't know, Wyoming had an exodus of players and coaches from last season. They are going to be a bottom 30 team in the country. And that's like, they're going to be really freaking bad. But you're right. Like, Chase Brown was dominant. And I like seeing that he had 3 catches. He was involved in the passing game. It wasn't like a weapon, but he had good volume. He had a great 8.0 yards per rush. And he had a nice 38 long run. But I'm with you. I want to see more. I definitely want to see more because at this point, what I would project Chase Brown to be is a day 3, probably late, maybe UDFA running back that hopefully can, make some noise and make a team in the preseason. But if he just tears up the Big Ten, all year around long, then hey, like, give me, I'll believe in that. But against Wyoming, I'm not, saying that he's a stud or, put him on a watch list just yet. I guess he's on the watch list to become on the watch list at this point for me.
Yeah. One person I do want to talk about from Wyoming, which if we want to talk about awful quarterback play, Wyoming had awful quarterback play. Like, that was bad. But Titus Spinn,
it was gross.
Titus Spinn actually had a few really nice runs for, being the only source of offense that Wyoming has. Like, he actually played pretty well. Like, they didn't score a lot of points, but that is mostly on, the rest of the team there. And I think he's like, I don't know if he showed it a lot for you, but I think he showed me that he could be a compliment in the NFL level.
I don't know. I got to see a lot more, right? I want to see more from Chase. I want to see a lot more from Titus. They're so bad.
He's got to go to the Senior Bowl for him to, make a drafted position. He has to go to the Senior Bowl, and he has to
really impress. Yeah.
But I don't think that's like terribly far fetched. If you watched, some of his runs, I think. Yeah, I mean, the quarterback play in Wyoming was way worse. They hit at one point. I think he was like one for 9, with a couple picks at one point.
He finished at 5 for 20.
Yeah,
give you an idea.
Yeah, so I mean, he was not. He's a runner. He's an athlete rather than a quarterback. And that's fine for, I think, what the level of competition that Wyoming plays at. But I think, they had that. What they're going to do in Wyoming is they're going to rely on Titus Spinn, and he's going to run the ball a lot. But one other person I did forget to mention from Illinois was Isaiah Williams. He's kind of their gadget wide receiver. He is the lead target there in terms of the the wide receiver. I'd like to see more from him again, but in the same time, they didn't throw the ball much past the line of scrimmage, and most of his catches were all just kind of screen plays and kind of stuff like that, right? So I think he's somebody to pay attention to, because I think he could kind of sneak up the boards, kind of like a poor man's Wan'Dale Robinson kind of thing from last year, and he could sneak into like the 6th or 7th round as a gadget weapon for an offense. Probably not terribly fantasy relevant in the NFL, but just something to keep an eye on there.
What
about Northwestern?
It's possible, but I think the big takeaway from it is, hey, Illinois and Wyoming, they're not good teams. Like, Wyoming's horrible, but Illinois is still a pretty bad team. They're going to be one of the weaker Power 5 schools, I believe. They're going to give a lot of easy wins to Big Ten teams. And DeVito looked pretty good, but I think that's more because of Wyoming. This Wyoming quarterback, he might be one of the worst starting QBs in the country. But yeah, Brown was interesting. Brown's the really only one that I'm like terribly interested out of this, but that'll wrap it up, and we can move on to this next game we had.
Yeah, so Northwestern, Nebraska. So I messed up last week. I said that Nebraska was in the Pac-12. I meant to say the Big Ten. That's my bad there. But I'll be honest. I don't have much fantasy interest in really anybody in either of these two schools. I think Evan Hull and Cam Porter are the only two that have even decent fantasy value, both out of Northwestern. Do you have anything with either of these two guys? Well, Trey Palmer, I guess he was a surprise.
I mean, to be honestly, the big things I took from this takeaway weren't really about the players. It was more about Scott Frost is going to be fired by Halloween, I believe. It won't happen in September. October 1, I believe his buyout goes from $15 million to $7.5 or something like that. It's a really big drop. So Husker fans, if you are really looking to turn the page, just wait. It'll happen in October, I believe. Yeah, I'm not too interested. Hull's like super like long shot lottery ticket. I think the biggest value you're going to have for players in this game are C2C related.
I agree with that. I think Trey Palmer could sneak into the tail end of the draft, but we'll see there. Were there any other big week 0 kind of games that you've got anything from? There weren't many good games that this past week, but it gave us a taste. But
I do want to give Vanderbilt a little love here. Vanderbilt in most books over under was 2.5. They've got one in the books. They looked great against Hawaii. Apparently, they should play off the mainland of the United States every week. I guess they would probably be 12-0 if they played Hawaii 12 weeks. But no, I don't think Vanderbilt's all of a sudden become a power in the SEC. They're still the worst team in the SEC. But if you can still get a 2.5 over, which I highly doubt, I would smash that. I think they have a chance to beat that in September. You heard it. Well, August and September.
I didn't realize that their over-under was 2.5 wins. That's, I would have taken that at the beginning of the season in every scenario.
Yeah, they're basically locked to go 0-4 in SEC play, but with their out of conference, and they have been making some changes. I think that I think what Vanderbilt has is some potential C2C assets. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. All right, well, let's jump into the actually kind of exciting stuff here in week 1. So big marquee matchups: Oregon versus Georgia, Cincinnati versus Arkansas, and Ohio State versus Notre Dame. What are you looking forward to in these 3 games?
I mean, these are the big ones, especially number 1 and 3, right? We've got highly ranked teams. We have the returning national champions, Go Dogs. I'm really curious to see what Georgia's offense looks like, because their wide receivers are pretty weak. They got some decent running backs, but then their tight ends. Holy crap. I'm wondering if they're going to be running 13 personnel. That's 1 running back, 3 tight ends regularly. So that's a big thing out of that game.
So I'm actually really looking forward to Adonai Mitchell versus Oregon. He was a true freshman last year. He had a really big second half of the season, especially in the championship game. I want to see if he can build off of that, right? When you look at freshmen, you want to see them going up and their incline, right? You don't want to see guys start off really strong and then kind of tail off. So this is what the kind of start. I want to see what start Adonai Mitchell has this season and see if he's actually, improved, and if he can continue to get better and better and better, and maybe get himself into high draft pick potential.
Yeah. I will say the running back that I like out of Georgia is Kenny McIntosh. I think that Milton has been the big, darling, but I think Kenny McIntosh could have a very big breakout year and have some huge rise in the Dynasty and Devy world. How about the Cincy Arkansas game?
Yeah, so you want to see what happens with now that Treylon Burks is gone. What happens with Arkansas's offense? Who steps up? It's going to be a kind of committee at wide receiver there. They're going to spread the ball around. Hazelwood is the big transfer. He's been a disappointment so far in his college career. So, can he finally live up to that 5-star potential that he had, right? And we'll see. That's, I think, the big news there. Cincinnati, obviously, they're replacing a lot of players. I don't think that they're nearly as good as their ranking says they are.
Yeah, with Cincinnati, I don't have too much interest, to be honest. Right, undefeated team, first group of 5 to get into, to get into the college football playoffs. I think they're gonna, if they go 10-2, I think that'd be a really solid year for them this year. We'll see what happens. Arkansas, yeah, Hazelwood. I mean, maybe. I'm just about out of patience with, waiting for Hazelwood to do something. I doubt it, but hey, the opportunity's there. The real interesting player for me in this game is KJ Jefferson. Um, I think that a lot of people are going to hate KJ Jefferson, say he's more of a runner. He's, this college style quarterback, but very big dude, good speed, pretty good arm. Just, accuracy is the concern. What do you think about KJ Jefferson? Do you think that they're like a real NFL prospect?
I don't think so. I think he could be kind of like that Kellen Mond type of player. He's just a solid college quarterback, and then he can maybe go in the second or third round. But then he's going to have very limited NFL potential. I'm not really terribly interested in him as a prospect unless he starts showing a significant improvement in the passing game. I want to see a significant improvement in accuracy, timing, decision making, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Hey, if you tell me that we're getting second or third round draft capital, I'd say that's a huge win for KJ Jefferson's value.
Yeah, I think that's the ceiling. That's the top end of the band.
Probably. Yeah, I think at best we're looking at KJ Jefferson the way we looked at Jalen Hurts going to the draft, which personally, actually, I'm starting to become a pretty big fan of Jalen as an NFL QB. But I remember pre-draft there was a lot of haters.
Yeah, I think with Jalen Hurts, it was like, is this improved? Because he made a massive improvement going to Lincoln Riley's offense.
Yep.
And a lot of people were questioning whether that was real. And it appears that was. So, but do you have anything else about them, or do you want to jump to Ohio State and Notre Dame?
Let's talk about the marquee matchup of the week.
Yeah, I think this is the biggest one by far. And I think this has the most fantasy potential in terms of talent by, massive amounts. Let's start with you.
Just Ohio State alone, right?
Yeah. So let's start with you. What do you think about the players here?
So the things I'm looking out for big time is Buckner, the true sophomore quarterback for Notre Dame, high recruit, talented. He got opportunities last year, kind of in the J.J. McCarthy role, where he would come in for like certain series or certain plays, this and that. Good runner, pretty solid passer, has a high ceiling. I want to see what Buckner can do this year. Outside of that, the two people I'm next interested in are Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. Why? Why am I not mentioning, Jackson and Jigba? Why am I not mentioning C.J. Stroud, Michael Mayer, Travion Henderson? It's because I feel like we already know what they are. They're superstars. Like, there's a very decent chance all four of those players are first-round draft picks in their respective draft classes. So, obviously if they just stink it up, especially Stroud, that's concerning. But what I want to see is the new blood. Let's see these two young receivers, these true sophomore receivers for Ohio State that are going to be stepping in to replace what they lost last year. And then I want to see what the young quarterback can do. Can he have a Drake May type, first outing and really start getting people excited?
Yeah, that's obviously an interesting area. One player you didn't mention, I want to see what the Notre Dame running back room looks like. Audric Esteem is looking like he's probably going to be the lead guy this year with injuries. I'm interested to see what he does. He could be a potential steal. He's basically free in C2C drafts. He could have a big year, and we'll see what happens with him. I think he was a decently touted prospect coming out of high school, and I think he could be an interesting kind of replacement for Kyron Williams. He's a different style. He's a kind of a bruiser rather than Kyron Williams, a little bit smaller. He was kind of a little bit more shifty. Audric Esteem is going to be kind of your, straight power guy. But, interesting there. And I want to get your opinion on this. I've been seeing some reports from some of the draft scouts that I follow about JSN not being a guaranteed first round pick, or at least guaranteed high first round pick like everybody thinks he is. Do you think that's entirely noise? Do you think JSN actually has some things he needs to work on to solidify his draft status?
Yeah, I've been seeing it too, and most of it seems to be coming from athleticism point of view. They seem to think that JSN is not quite the athlete that we've been seeing in these high first round draft pick wide receivers recently. And honestly, it's hard to say because the feel, when you're watching the game, right? Everyone thought Treylon Burks was like this super crazy athlete, going to run amazing numbers at the combine based off of what we saw on the field, and then largely disappointed at the combine. Everyone thought Chris Olave was like pretty solid, as an athlete, and then he crushed the combine. So, I mean, honestly, I'll just table that to when we see some numbers. Like, the real question is, to me, is it JSN? Is it Keishon Butte? I think the tape makes it very evident that Butte's a elite athlete and is going to have a great RES score. I'm curious to see what JSN has. I'm definitely not slowing my roll. I still have JSN as number one in this class, but Butte, right? It seems he's healthy. So if he rolls off a couple of weeks, showing him normal self, he'll be right in that tier with JSN.
Yeah. So one thing that we have questioned about Kyle McCord. I don't see any situation where Kyle McCord plays quarterback unless for some reason Notre Dame just absolutely tanks. And
blowout is the only chance, I think. Which I don't think so. I think Notre Dame is, they're going to run the ball. They have a decent defense. I mean, against that offense, it's hard to say anyone has a decent defense, and unless you're like Georgia or Bama this year. But I don't think it's going to be a blow. I mean, maybe we see a series or two.
So you might disagree with this, but I think that people are kind of over exaggerating after the Utah game from the Rose Bowl last year, right? I think people are overestimating how impressive that win was. I think Utah was not nearly as good as the record said they were. And I think that now Ohio State is still going to be a top 4 team in the country by pretty much every margin. They're the best team in the Big Ten, but I'm not sure that they're blowing out a team by 40 good, especially in the first game of the season.
Yeah, I definitely don't think they're going to be blowing out Notre Dame by 40, but if they're up 21 in the and have the ball in the fourth quarter, I could definitely see them starting to roll out some younger players, which I don't think is like implausible. It's not what I'm predicting.
Yeah,
I think Notre Dame will have it close in the third, and I think Ohio State will start to pull away late third, and will probably effectively end the game by 5 minutes into the fourth or whatever. But hey, we're probably going to fight on this all year. I'm a big believer in Utah. I'm picking them to win the Pac-12. I think that they're a good team, and like everyone wants to shit on them for what Ohio State did to them last year. They had so many people in their secondary injured. They were playing like third string cornerback and this and that. Like, they're a good team. They're coached very well. And I mean, obviously you have a new coach. The two biggest rivals in the Pac-12 both have a new coach in Oregon and USC. I don't think it's crazy at all to see Utah repeat as Pac-12 champs.
I definitely don't think they're going to repeat. And that's going to jump us into what are we watching? So I know you had talked about Utah. So, kind of expand a little bit on your Utah love here.
Yeah, so my number one game that I'm watching on the list is going to be Florida-Utah. Utah's coming down to the swamp. Utah, these are like two almost opposite teams. You got like some lower tier recruits that are coached up really well. They get old, they stay old. And, there's that classic, like, good, gritty, hardy college football team. Whereas Florida, they've had all sorts of issues. They've, they have a lot of talent and they've disappointed, and they bring in the new coach, and then they have this amazing talent in Anthony Richardson. Really, that's why I want to watch this game mostly, is Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson got limited options last year as a sophomore, got almost none as a freshman. But this dude is a freaking tank. He's 6'4", like 250, and he's blazing fast. I think he's at least like 4.50. Like, I don't know how much faster than that, and he's got a cannon. The issue is decision making. He's got poor accuracy, and he was 6-5 in touchdown to INT ratio last year. He's got to make huge strides this season. But Anthony Richardson has like legitimate top 5 upside in the NFL draft in 2023 because he's got every tool you can really want.
Yeah. I think Florida's been one of those teams that, they start off really strong and then they get high in the rankings and then they just get obliterated in the SEC. That's kind of been their MO, for the last few years. And I think that's going to be different this year. I think they're going to lose this first game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to be bad. I think they're just going to be bad. I don't really like their coach. And to be honest, I think they're an overrated program at this point. They kind of, they're the what, 5th or 6th best program in the SEC right now.
Man, I gotta say, I wasn't expecting the Billy Napier hate. Wow. I'm a big fan of Billy Napier, actually. Did great things at ULL. We'll see. I think that is going to be a rough year one, but I think it's more because he's got to turn around kind of like a dumpster fire. Honestly, Florida is like the Texas of the SEC. Not quite as a mess, but always hyped, always have high recruits, always has good recruiting classes, but has just underperformed regularly. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to turn it around as a team. But what I'm watching more for Florida really comes down to 2 players, mainly Anthony Richardson, but also Montrell Johnson, the transfer running back that lit up the Sun Belt with Billy Napier at University of Louisiana Lafayette last year. I think Montrell Johnson is getting not nearly enough hype. Nearly enough.
Yeah. He could be an interesting player. I don't hate Billy Napier. I just think that if you're going to move to Florida as a coach, ideally you want somebody from a Power 5 school. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with like some of the bigger programs is they reach on these young coaches that are kind of up and coming, but they're not there yet. They haven't had the competition, in other Power 5 schools. So they jump to these programs that have huge expectations, and then they get fired after a couple bad seasons.
I mean, I think the biggest thing that's going to determine Napier's success is recruiting. If he can compete with the top, like he needs to have top 10 classes basically every year. Otherwise, he will be deemed as a failure. And he needs to be pretty quickly pushing for top 5. That's the standard. That's the standard at UF. You need to be one of the best recruiting teams in the country. And pretty soon, they need, right? If Richardson comes back next year and has a solid year, the expectation will be that they will be vying for an SEC East title, which those are some big ask because I mean, Georgia, it's not even fair to me to compare the two. Like Georgia is stacked probably 8 top 5 recruiting classes in a row or something like crazy like that. Like the fact that they actually beat Bama with their limited offense last year still kind of blows my mind. I mean, they
split. They did split with Alabama.
Hey, they got the one that really matters, though.
Yeah, they did. After Alabama lost to
two
top
ifs and buts, man.
Yeah, I mean, give it to Georgia. They won, but I think Alabama, when healthy, was still the better team. But let me go to my first game here.
Yeah,
so
go for it.
USC and Rice. So I just want to see the Lincoln Riley era start off in USC, right? If this game is close, Lincoln Riley is going to be in trouble. and I just mean in terms of media pressure. I think if he struggles with all the transfers that he got, all the players that he brought over with him from Oklahoma, and they struggle to right off the gate with Rice, I think we're looking at, he's not going to be on the hot seat or anything like that. Nothing crazy like that. I just think you're going to start seeing some media pressure. Like, hey, is this guy actually as good as we thought he was? But I think Caleb Williams is going to come out slinging it. I think they're going to blow out Rice, and I think USC is by far my favorite to win the Pac-12. I actually think they're going to make the playoffs, but I think that's kind of dependent on they're going to have to go undefeated. If they lose a single game, then they're out. So, what do you think about that?
Wow.
Obviously, you don't like the USC pick because
the USC love. My goodness, I didn't realize it was that strong.
It's Lincoln Riley. Like Lincoln Riley, before when he was in Oklahoma, how many times did he miss the playoffs? The last year, right?
They were obviously very successful. I think USC for the 2024 college football playoffs is a lot more realistic. Just because he's got to turn around a team, pretty strong, and fast. But yeah, I mean, if they don't absolutely obliterate Rice, holy crap, are my antennas up? Like, yes, obviously Riley's job is not in jeopardy at all, but the talent difference is insane. Like, I think this game's going to be over by the first drive in the second half. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we see an entire quarter from like USC backups.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. I want to watch Caleb Williams, and I want to watch Lincoln Riley. Those are the only two. I don't think this is a good game. I just want to watch those two for the first half and then switch it over to a better game.
Yeah.
So I'll take the second one to start off, and my second one's going to be Washington State and Idaho, and I was actually planning on going to this game, but I have to work this weekend, so no dice. But I'm looking at my Deshaun Sterling pick, right? I want to look at him, and I want to see Cameron Ward, and I want to see the Washington State offense. What does it look like? Are they looking good? Do they look like a team that could be a surprised threat in the Pac-12? Not surprise contender, but a surprise threat to maybe cost somebody a game. And I think that's kind of the big thing I want to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I'm interested to see what Cameron Ward does. Cameron Ward, if you don't know the player, go check him out. He's a transfer that just came into Washington State, and he lit it up before. And this dude is like 6'3", 220, can run, like has a big arm. Like, honestly, from racking my head, I think he's the only player in the country that you could compare to Anthony Richardson at all, in terms of the athlete, the total package. You're right. If they don't light up Idaho, then I am like almost, not interested in Washington State, at least as a team. But if they come out, with that great offense and just crush it and put up a 40 burger, I'm with you. Washington State could definitely be a threat, not a contender, but definitely a threat.
What about you? What's your second game?
So my second game, I'm going down to North Kakalaki. That's how the locals call North Carolina, if you didn't know. I'm going to ECU. North Carolina State's coming into town. The other North Carolina school game this weekend. And I'm going because I want to see my guy, Devin Leary, planted my flag last week. I think that, these teams are very outmatched. I am picking North Carolina State to win their division and represent the ACC, their side in the conference game, which, what does that mean? That means knocking down Clemson, right? So obviously that's a bit of a, hot take, but I think Leary's a good player. I think he potentially could be a great player. Really what it comes down to with Leary is how good of a year can Leary put up? Because what he needs to do is the Kenny Pickett thing. Now, Leary's been a lot better, prior to his last season than Pickett was. Pickett was honestly pretty terrible other than 2021, but where Leary's, actually showed some really good numbers and performance. If North Carolina State can go and win the ACC on the back of just, Devin Leary killing it, especially if he has a good game against Clemson and is the reason that they beat a very good defense, I do not think that, late first round pick in 2023 NFL draft is crazy.
Yeah, he's got to play well. He's got to dominate. He's got to do kind of what Pitt did last year, right? Where they came out of nowhere and were,
Yeah. I think they just need to chuck it all around, just be a real prolific offense because, they got a pretty good defense, but I think it's going to come on the arm of Devin Leary. He's a real only North Carolina State player I'm super interested in. ECU has a couple that I did want to mention. For you C2C players, you probably remember the name CJ Johnson. This is a player that as a freshman crushed it and just was one of the best lower tier school players as a true freshman. Sophomore year was very solid. But last year as a junior was pretty damn shaky. And he actually just got suspended for almost the entire offseason by the ECU coaching staff. And it was only a couple weeks ago where they reinstated him. So it seems like he's, back on the, or at least out of the doghouse. Was a talented player, big bodied wide receiver. So I'm curious. I have him on some C2C leagues, kind of just sitting there just in case, because I know what he had done in the past. I want to see what he can do. I don't have huge, expectations at all, but hey, have a big game against a good school like North Carolina State. I'm excited. The other one is their running back at, the Pirates running back. It's Mitchell Keaton. So he's a true junior, and last year really had a great year. Super quiet season, honestly. It's just a good runner. We're talking about an East Carolina, running back right now. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's going to be a superstar at all. I think he's going to be, he's in that Chase Brown conversation with me. I'm curious. Let's see what happens. I expect him to probably come back, for his senior season next year. But can he get himself to a Senior Bowl? Can he show out? Can he make a roster? He's one of those 4th round rookie draft picks, 5th round rookie draft picks that you take that, could be a lottery ticket, So if you're watching the game, check him out. He's a good little player.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't have much about that game. I think you hit a spot on. Leary's the big name to watch there, and I think you're looking to see what he does. What's your third game?
All right, so my third game is I'm going to be going up to Boston, right? We're shipping up to Boston. Rutgers is coming in town. BC's starting off with another Power 5 team, right? They're only playing Rutgers, so it's nothing too scary. But BC was really derailed when Phil Jakovich, I think it was a broken thumb. He hurt his throwing hand very early in the year and missed basically the whole year. He came back, he wasn't even healthy. You could tell he played like crap when he came back. But I want to see the Phil Jakovich, Zay Flowers combo, right? Some people thought Zay Flowers was going to come out in this past NFL draft. He stayed. He wanted to, run it back with Jakovich for his senior year. He was really good in 2020. And then last year, he didn't have Jakovich basically the whole year. So it was meh. It was very meh. But this is a former highly rated quarterback recruit, and Jakovich went to Notre Dame, transferred over to BC, and has had some moments. So big guy, pretty good athlete. With a big year, he could definitely put himself into that, whatever, second round draft pick, in the 23 draft.
Yeah. Yeah. So Jakovich, he has to make up for last year, right? He really struggled last year because of the injury. So you really want to see, him come back and throw the ball well with accuracy and all that kind of stuff, right? The entire year is going to be something to watch with him, and I like this pick for your game. for me, I'm watching the LSU Florida State game on Sunday.
Good pick.
I'm a LSU homer. It's where I grew up, and we'll see what happens there with LSU. I want to see what the running back room looks like. So, just for anybody wondering, Noah Kane and Armani Goodwin are going to be the two players there first couple games of the season. John Emery was suspended for, I believe it was the first 4 games from these academic issues from the past year. So once that suspension's over, he'll be back into the the mix, and we'll see what happens there. But I want to see what Armani Goodwin was a true freshman last year. Didn't really get much opportunities, but he's been getting pretty good reviews from Brian Kelly and his staff. And Noah Kane has kind of been a disappointment. He didn't play well last year, but I think part of that too was that the Penn State offensive line just wasn't very good last year. The Penn State offense as a whole wasn't very good last year. So I don't really think that that's like something you can really put all on Noah Kane. Now, Noah Kane's not, the first round running back anymore, like people thought he was when he was coming out of high school. But, let's see what he looks like now after this in a new system and with a potentially probably a pretty bad offensive line. This isn't a good offensive line either. So, how does he look now with, a just as bad of an offensive line? And, you want to see before they get into the SEC games, I want to see what LSU looks like, because based off what they played like last year, this team's not going to get 6 wins if they play like they did last year offensively and defensively. The thing is now they're healthy, right? They had a lot of injuries last year. So I think this is probably an 8 to 9 win team. It's still a rebuilding team. They still need to build up the offensive line, but there's a lot of players here that that have a lot of potential, and I want to see Malik Neighbors. You want to see Keyshawn Boutte. You want to see either they haven't announced their starting quarterback yet, but it's probably going to be the Arizona State transfer because he is kind of fits a little bit of the mold. I think that Brian Kelly likes. He likes the more veteran quarterbacks, especially first year in the system. I think it's probably unrealistic to say that Garrett Nussmeier will start. And then, but finally, I want to kind of talk about Armani Goodwin a little bit more. He is a guy that, he reminds me a little bit of kind of Alvin Kamara style of player. He's probably not as talented as Alvin Kamara, but he does have that kind of potential. He's a shifty guy, right? He's a third down back in the NFL. That is his role. He's a third down back with maybe just a little bit of potential, first and second down. But I think he could really showcase his talents this year for a team that might need to, throw little screens, throw a few screens to kind of get some pressure off the offensive line.
Yeah, I'll be curious. The biggest curious for me is my guy Malik Neighbors. Planted my flag on him last week. I think that the reports coming out of fall camp has been nothing but great news. I want to see if Boutte is fully healthy, if he's back to his dominant self, and I'm really curious the quarterback because Jaden Daniels, super high recruit, had some big time success at Arizona State, but last year sucked it all up, and there's a lot of reports about character, not really character, but leadership and maturity issues. Not character, but leadership and maturity issues. But I will say, when Arizona State had weapons, that's when he was crushing it. All of a sudden, he's got weapons again at LSU. So it's not crazy to me to think maybe, he can, get some draft stock back for himself. But we'll see, because Brian Kelly with quarterbacks, oh, God, he's almost as bad as Jim Harbaugh. They just want to play each one and never really decide. And so that's a headache there. Any Florida State players you're particularly interested in?
I think Florida State's a shell of itself, so not particularly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Florida State is more of a brand than a football team at this point. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And I don't know. I think we're going to be doing some more waiting. We'll see. If that's all you have, I do want to circle back to the Maryland players that I'm pretty excited about.
Yeah, jump in.
So the name most people actually probably know is Tua's younger brother, Talia Tungavalo. I'm not a big fan, like at least as an NFL prospect. He actually had a pretty solid year last year, especially at Rutgers, in the Big Ten, faced some pretty great competition. So I think he could have a good year, and who knows, that name recognition might vault him up, might be able to become a day 2 draft pick. But the player I'm really interested for Rutgers is Kim Jarrett. This is a amazing talent player. Sorry. Of course, I'm just going to totally speak out, take the foot out of my mouth. Raheem Jarrett obviously doesn't play for Rutgers. He plays for Maryland. So we're not going to talk about him today. But he would be exciting if he was playing against BC. So I'm going to walk that one back. Apologize for that.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about the Maryland game. But
yeah, that I totally goofed up on that one. I don't know what I was doing. I had the notes correct in my little notebook. And then for some reason, I just jumped to Maryland and then total fusion of knowledge. Apologize for that, folks.
Yeah. Do you have anybody for Rutgers? Or I don't have anybody for Rutgers that I'm really terribly interested in. But
no. Let's just ignore the last minute and a half and pretend it didn't even bring us back to that game.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into the NFL cutdowns here. So there's a few big names to talk about. So Jimmy Garoppolo was re-signed. Marlon Mack was cut. Sonny Michel to the Chargers, Kenyon Drake to the Ravens, and Laviska Shenault to the Panthers. So there's maybe 2 players here that I'm, interested in, and or am I not even interested in? 2 players. There's one player that I'm actually interested in, and then there's 3 players that are stories that I think are just interesting stories. So. Starting us off with Kenyon Drake, he's the one I'm interested in. If J.K. Dobbins is not ready week 1, Kenyon Drake is probably going to be the starter and is possibly an RB1. That's probably a little rich that early into the season, but, he has high potential in that offense. Like any running back in that offense has high potential, right? There was a reason that we were drafting, what was the name? It was something. It was the Ravens running back last year that ended up playing a single game, and got a ton of hype.
They had everybody. They had Ingram, and they had they had Le'Veon Bell at some point. I think they had all these old washed running backs.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting with Kenyon Drake. We'll see what happens there. Probably. He's at least interesting for the very beginning of the season. Once J.K. Dobbins starts coming back from his injury, then he probably doesn't have any value anymore. So Jimmy Garoppolo and Laviska Shenault, these are the 2 big stories for me, and Marlon Mack. So Marlon Mack, the big story there is Dameon Pierce. We'll get into him here in a little bit. But Jimmy Garoppolo, I think this is kind of saying, what this says to me is that they're not ready to trust Trey Lance fully yet.
I see a lot of people wanted to say that right away. Twitter freaked out once Jimmy restructured his contract. I think what it is they're not willing to let him go to Seattle, without some type of draft compensation, because he had a $25 million cap hit or whatever the heck it was. And no one would trade for a $25 million Jimmy Garoppolo. So, it went down to the wire. And they said, well, this is what we can do, Jimmy. We'll give you a guaranteed $7 million, because guess what? If we cut you, it's unlikely that anyone was going to actually pick you up on waivers at that $25 million, right, to continue that contract. So you can actually get probably more money than you would have gotten. Also, we're going to give you a no trade clause, which would guarantee your ability to determine who we trade you to if we do trade you in the future. And we'll also put a no tag clause, so we cannot franchise tag you to keep you. So the story for me really is I think it makes Jimmy Garoppolo's value more, because I think it's more likely that he's going to get traded to a good spot. It might happen, week 5 after a contender has a QB go down. It might happen when Cleveland Browns are 0-3 with Brissett. Maybe they'll say, we'll give you a 4th round pick and Jimmy can come in for 8 weeks and get us by. I don't love it because for Trey Lance, because obviously, right, if Trey Lance is not playing well, if they're losing games, a lot of people are going to start calling for Jimmy, and that's not what I want for this young QB with all the hype behind him.
That right there is why you trade Jimmy Garoppolo no matter what, or cut him. That right there.
I agree. That's exactly what I would have cut him. Said, go ahead, go to Seattle. I don't give a shit. Like, Seattle sucks. Like, yes, you know what I mean? Like,
if I'm Trey Lance, I'm always looking over my shoulder now. Every single play, I'm looking over my shoulder.
Every bad throw at practice, every failed 3rd down conversion on Sundays, every time.
Yep. It doesn't matter how actually good Jimmy Garoppolo is, but the fact is they were what up like maybe a play or 2 away from winning a Super Bowl 2 years ago, and
play or 2 away from going one last year.
Yeah, and so we're talking like a guy who is a winner. And now I am under the firm belief that quarterback wins are not a quarterback stat. That is a team stat, not a that is winning a champion. Like, if Jimmy Garoppolo would have won a championship 2 years ago, that doesn't mean that Jimmy Garoppolo was a Super Bowl winning or a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. It just means that he was on a really, really good team. But I think this hurts Trey Lance just in terms of he's always going to be looking over his shoulder now. And I wonder if it hurts his performance at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. That's the biggest comeback. And for me, not from a fantasy perspective, but from a team perspective, I don't want to have my locker room divided, because unless Trey Lance comes out and just crushes it, there will be players in that locker room, on that team, coaches, front office people, players, you name it, are going to be like, man, why the fuck isn't Jimmy in the game? Yeah,
because there's some things that Trey Lance does really well. He's got a really good deep ball, and he has a really good athletic ability, and that's great for fantasy. But the issue is his accuracy. Can he make the throws when the game matters to just get the drive moving? Like, the one thing that Jimmy Garoppolo is really good at is just throwing the ball right at the sticks and getting the first down. It's pretty simple, but that's that's all you need to do in the NFL if you have good players around you. But let's move on to Marlon Mack. Dameon Pierce, I think we both were kind of thinking that he could be a surprise when he got drafted. Not necessarily, he's not going to be elite, but he could be a surprise and then he's a starter. And it looks like that's going to play out here. What do you think?
So I'm going to take a bit of a victory lap here, because post NFL draft, I moved Dameon Pierce up to my RB3 and to my 112, to my 12th ranked rookie overall. And this is exactly why. Because the landing spot was perfect. Because I liked the player. I didn't love the player. Certainly didn't love the draft capital. But the landing spot was great. And I knew there was an opportunity where he could potentially get enormous volume. Now, I don't think he's going to get enormous volume. I don't think he's going to be a top 5, probably even not a top 10 running back in terms of volume. But a lot of people do right now. And I could have taken that 112. Well, really more like probably a mid-second, where you could have drafted him many places. And I could turn him into a 2023 first-round pick. And, right? I'd said that Twitter exploded when Jimmy Garoppolo restructured comment. No, Twitter really exploded when Marlon Mack was cut. And it was just Dameon Pierce. Like, how many times have I had to talk to people on Twitter in the last few days saying, no, you should not take Dameon Pierce over Breece Hall. You should not take Dameon Pierce over kind of it's kind of a joke. It's like, no, like this player and this player there's a big talent gap. Like, yes, Damon Pierce is a really good situation right now, but that's only right now.
So is Michael Carter.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it happens. So is Jameson Robinson. And it happens all the time to these undrafted or late round draft picks. There's a reason that's when you were drafted. And typically, the reason you were very good in fantasy is because of volume and opportunity, not necessarily talent. James Robinson is not one of the most talented players in back. He's like RB3 or RB5 his rookie season. Please, like, send anyone. Please DM me. Let's talk. If you think they were the third or fifth best running back in the NFL that year. Like, to me, it was obvious. No, they're not. Maybe 20th. Like, maybe 15th at best.
Yeah, opportunity is king for running backs. It doesn't matter. Like, for wide receivers, you actually do need to be talented to like produce. But running backs, you can literally just be a guy, and as long as you have the opportunity, you're gonna produce in fantasy.
We see it all the time. Every year, there's a really good fantasy running back that got there mainly just because of volume. But yeah, I mean,
Sony Michel, I don't have any interest in Sony Michel. I don't know. He lost all the athleticism that he used to have. The injuries have really taken a toll on his career, and I don't have any interest in him anymore. I don't know about you, but.
So my interest in Michel is as a backup. My interest is mainly for a best ball league. Especially for a best ball league, because I think there certainly will be weeks where he gets some goal line work and gets a touchdown or two. But the real value for Michel would be is if Eckler misses an extended period of time. Because when Akers was down and when Henderson was missing time last year, Michel was very useful. Michel was getting volume. He was getting a lot of fantasy points. Why? Because he got the opportunity. I do not think Sony Michel is a player that, getting, 8 touches or whatever, 8 rushes and 3 or 4 targets a game is going to produce fantasy numbers. He's not this elite player anymore. Really, ever since his initial knee injury, he hasn't been. But I like Isaiah Spiller, and Isaiah Spiller should be the primary backup tackler. But Michel is a veteran. Michel's a Super Bowl winning player, so I wouldn't be shocked if Michel takes that role on at some point.
Yeah, I mean, he's an interesting backup for sure, but he's probably for me, he's like 3rd or 4th string in there.
Yeah, deep league back only. Deep league, especially for a best ball league. That's really where I'm interested in that.
So let's go to the last guy here, Laviska Shenault. I would say he's been on the all hype team for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, he basically was dead after, this past season. In terms of the hype team, he was going into last year, but sucked once again. But now he gets traded and people are excited again. I mean, honestly, the news for me with Viska is more about target consolidation for Christian Kirk and Marvin Jones. It's honestly nothing really to do with Viska, like as his fantasy value.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like Christian Kirk as a player. I think he is vastly overpaid, but he has an amazing floor right now in fantasy. There's a good chance that he sees, 10 targets a game, 12 targets a game. Like, he has nobody competing for him with him for targets other than Marvin Jones, right? Like, I can't imagine that the Jaguars aren't going to be bad enough to throw the ball 40 times a game, 30 times a game. So there's a lot of targets there that can be had.
Yeah. I think that Kirk and Jones could definitely be in that 7 to 8 target per game number, which that's a good amount. You're looking at I don't want to do public math right now, but that's a very healthy number of targets, and they can be. I find myself snagging them in so many drafts late. And again, these are especially best ball players. I think these are really good bye week fill-ins, injury replacements. Marvin Jones is like routinely undervalued for years. He's been putting up wide receiver 2/3 numbers and has been just getting completely disrespected in the community. He's an older player. I think he's 32 right now. But typically younger QBs benefit from older wide receivers because they know exactly this is where I break off my route. This is where I do that. And they know, they're those savvy players. So I like them
Christian Kirk
both.
is more of like a slot guy, right? So I would be surprised if he doesn't get the majority of targets by like a pretty significant amount. I don't know. I don't think that Christian Kirk's going to be a wide receiver 1, but I think he's going to be a high wide receiver 2, maybe mid wide receiver 2, just because he's got so much target potential there.
I mean, that's great value, right? If he's a high wide receiver 2, you're not paying close to that.
Yeah, he's good enough to where he can still get open and demand these targets. And they're going to throw the ball a lot. They're going to be bad. They're going to they're going to lose 13, 14 games easy. So I think they're going to be, passing the ball in garbage time quite a bit. But do you have anything else about any of these guys? Or
I just mentioned Kenyon Drake real quickly. I mean, they did bring in Mike Davis a bit ago for the purpose of, backing up and injury protection for Dobbins. I think they brought in Drake just because Dobbins isn't as healed as they were hoping at the time. We'll see. I think he could have a useful September. I think it'll just depend whoever the two get the bulk, because I think they're going to have a very good offense. And, you could see plenty of, 18 rushes for 75 yards with a touchdown and, 2 or 3 catches. Whoever ends up being the primary back. But most likely they'll have a bit of a committee until Dobbins is back. But I mean, Drake's a good player. Like, we've seen him produce. Like, he was a great player, at times. So he's still pretty young. I mean, he's no spring chicken, but he's not like over the hill yet. Like, a Rex Burkhead is behind Dameon Pierce.
Yeah. We'll see what Davis, I think he's just kind of your average back. And if Kenyon Drake has anything left in the tank, then he's going to be the starter there for me. But we'll see. Do you have anything else for anybody?
I just want to say, hey, go watch some football, right? So we're, a Devy C2C/Dynasty podcast, right? So if you're here because you're tapping into our Dynasty content, thank you. We love you for that. We're happy to have you. But go watch some college football. Even if you don't want to play Devy, even if you don't want to play C2C, watch college football. It'll make you a better Dynasty player. You'll be able to say, hey, man, I remember that player. They were crushing it in college. Or when you're preparing for rookie drafts, you can say, look at these, all these great sophomores. Look at all these great players. And you can project, hey, what are these future draft picks going to be worth? So go watch yourself a game. Even if it's one, check out one of the 6 games that both Robert and I are going to be watching this week.
Yeah, I did want to say too, we're going to be moving the time to 5:30 Eastern for our next stream. So we look forward to seeing you guys then. And you can find us on Twitch. You can find us on YouTube. Find us on Twitter. And please give us a follow on there or a subscribe wherever you listen, or wherever you watch. And we really appreciate any feedback that you guys have for us. And I want to thank everybody for listening. I think we hopefully we provided you with a little bit of information and stuff to help you out. So do you have anything else for us, Eric?
No, it was great working with you again, Robert. Thank you. And thanks to all the listeners. Please like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.